r/AskReddit. What's the rudest thing a guest has ever done in your home? My grandpa was a carpenter, and he made for me for Christmas, when I was around 6/7, the most intricate and beautiful doll's house imaginable. It had electrical fittings with tiny chandeliers. It had furniture. It had fireplaces and doors, wallpaper, you name it. My mum organized a play date at our house a few months into the new year. I remember watching in horror as the chandeliers were ripped from the ceilings, doors ripped off their hinges, etc. It wasn't wear and tear, it was mindless. I ran crying to my mum and the other mum of my playdate. The other mum laughed it off and said that's why she won't get expensive things for her daughter. It absolutely broke my heart, and probably my grandpa's too. As such a careful and thoughtful child, I hope someone explained to him it wasn't me that destroyed the doll's house so quickly. The older I get, the more I realize what an awful thing that child did, and moreover how the parent handled it. I still think about it now. I hope I can restore it if I ever have children of my own. Had a bunch of people over for a New Year's event. One woman I used to work with was invited. We were pretty good friends at work, and generally her and my wife got along. The whole night she sat there hitting on me and trying to put her hand on my knee. It was really weird. Not to mention she had recently gotten married, which made it extra awkward. I wrote it off as something weird until I talked to my wife the next couple days. Turns out she had been talking to my wife a lot that night and kept trying to imply I had cheated or was going to cheat. Basically kept trying to wedge her way into our relationship in a really fucked up way. Luckily my wife isn't stupid and just ignored her bullshit all night. So I cut ties with that person, and luckily we don't work together anymore. Ran into her a couple times since then. Been polite but also cold. Such a weird situation. A married friend of my fiance was staying with us for a week. She ended up going out and meeting some dude somewhere and invited him over to our place to fuck. When they got there, my fiance and I were both home, so the friend and if she could borrow our bedroom. When we said no, the guy asked if he could shoot up heroin in our apartment. When my fiance told him no and asked him to leave, he groped her. When she told me to call the cops, he pulled a knife and threatened both of us. This is the only time I've ever pointed a loaded gun at another human being. When the cops arrived, we found out the shitbag had several warrants out for various crimes, including aggravated assault and rape. We don't talk to that friend anymore, and we did inform her husband of this situation. Not sure if this would be considered rude, but for sure not a good thing to do. I had 2 Australian kids staying at my house for a baseball tournament one time. One of them was a chronic bedwetter, but never told us. He stayed for 5 nights and peed the bed each night without telling us. Instead, each night he pushed whatever he peed onto the end of the bed. First night the sheets, second night the actual mattress protector, to stop any pee from getting to it. It was a bunk bed my brothers and I slept on as children, and lastly he peed directly on the mattress for 3 nights. Ruined the mattress, and we had no idea till he left. The real kicker though is, when he took a nap on our new couch, peed all over it, and then fled the scene, and we assumed the dog had done it, until we saw the bed, that is. I think that is something you should tell people who open their home to you, so they can prepare. And please, don't sleep on the couch if you know ya got a problem. Also, not trying to shame anyone for this kind of stuff. I feel like it's more common than most people realize, and I honestly just feel bad for him. Just wish he could have been honest with us, so we could have helped him out a bit. My grandpa was visiting us for a day, and I was ill. Had fever and all, so I was in bed, resting. After we all ate lunch, I crawled back into my bed 5 minutes later. He came into my room, kicked me out of my bed, and started to have a nap. My mom came to my room to check on me few minutes later. She found me laying on the floor next to bed and kicked him out of my bed, told him to leave. I was like 10 years old then. Edit. Never thought I'd get this much response. Someone mentioned about dominance, and yes, you're exactly right. My grandpa is useless, but believes men runs the world. My grandma only had 2 daughters, and he was pissed. Eldest sibling is always the best, but my mom, youngest, being brighter than the eldest, pissed him off. Then my mom had me, daughter, and my little brother. He was pissed with my arrival, but ecstatic with my brother. He tried to control my brother, but he couldn't, because he was growing old and my parents and grandma interfered with it constantly. I was weaker than him, so I was an easy target for him. He did so much more than taking my bed, like he tried to run me over with his car, but that's another story for another time. Edit 2. Couple of people asked about the car story, so here I go. TLDR, my grandpa was driving and sped up, braked in front of me in a mall parking lot as a joke. One day he took me to shopping, and it was extremely boring for me, because he only shopped for himself, and he made me carry everything he bought. Once we got back to his car, he had me put everything away in the trunk, and as soon as I closed the trunk, he drove away. WTF. I was confused, didn't know what to do, so I just stood there, lost. But he came back few minutes later, laughing and saying, "You didn't really think I'd leave you, did you?" I was upset but happy he came back, so I reached for the door, and I missed, because he moved the car forward. He did that few more times and drove away, again. WTF-2. I was crying at this point. Then I spotted something on the ground. It was my Angel Pocket, Polly Pocket. I must have dropped it while I was chasing the car. I started to walk toward it, and I saw him coming this way. Next moment my butt was on the ground and the car stopped right in front of me with loud screech. He sped up and braked to scare me. I sure was scared, alright. I thought he was going to run me over. I was crying uncontrollably. He told me to shut up and get in. As we were leaving the parking lot, he said, "You're no fun. It was just a joke." I sure had fun. My grandpa is an ass. A colleague was coming into town for a meeting. I invited him to stay with me, so he didn't have to stay with our boss. I specifically told him that the beer in the fridge wasn't mine, and asked him not to drink it. Well, not only did he drink all my roommate's beer while I slept, and refused to replace it, he also trashed my apartment. All the cupboards left open, toilet unflushed, beer cans and cigarettes everywhere. Yeah, he smoked inside. The following day, he made me so uncomfortable in my own home by repeatedly telling me that he was disappointed that we didn't fuck, and that he thought that's why I invited him to stay with me. He knows that I live in a work apartment, and that we have a guest room specifically for company employees that travel to the city. Edit. Thank you for all your replies. I've never had even half this much attention on Reddit, and I appreciate all your support so much. I'm going to answer a couple common questions/comments. Clarification on my living situation. I have 2 roommates high up in my company that travel a lot. Work got a 3-bedroom, and they pay all my utilities in exchange for me washing the sheets, dishes, etc. when they aren't around. Sometimes I get asked to host other traveling colleagues. Neither of my roommates were there when this happened. I did not take pictures. I wish I had thought of that. I did, however, have a witness. A close coworker friend spent the night because he had been drinking. The douche colleague then accused us of sleeping together. We didn't, and said that if I slept with him, there was no reason for me not to sleep with him too. You're right. I'm going to report it. Dyed her hair red in our bathroom sink, staining the brand new granite countertop, then dripped onto the new tile floor, then dripped onto the hardwood floor in the hallway, and ultimately slept in our guest bed with wet, freshly dyed red hair, staining the sheets and pillowcase. Jesus, this is unfathomable to me. I've been a long-term guest before. I was just slightly homeless at one point. I had dyed hair, and the color was in these reusable tubs, so it cost me nothing to maintain it. I just had to have a place to do it. Was so worried about not making a mess of my host's place. I got on my hands and knees and scrubbed the bottom of the shower with a magic eraser to clean off the small amount of residue that was left before I even left the bathroom. Did accidentally leave a spot on the counter later on down the line, despite covering the area in newspaper and stuff, and I tried remedies until it was clean over several weeks. Also put one of my t-shirts over their pillows until I was sure I'd have no bleed. I was so paranoid about ruining their things, it just hurts my brain to know people do the same or more of a mess and don't even care. I think I might be too late, but I'm going to post this anyways. When I was younger my family had to take in foreign exchange students to make some money. It was usually a pretty fun experience, and I got to learn a lot about other cultures. One student from Japan came. He was very shy and awkward around us. It's pretty common for the Asian students. I'm assuming it has to do with their culture. So pretty much the only times anyone would see him out of his room was when we were eating. After a couple of weeks of him staying with us, my dad found holes in the wall in our living room, which we later discovered he had been stabbing our walls, and after he blamed me for it, I was 9. We asked that he doesn't stay with us anymore and he left. The only thing we had left to do was clean out his bedroom, because there was another student coming. It turns out that he left us a present for us. Underneath his sheets was hundreds of tissues covered in semen. We were unable to follow up or let anyone know because for some reason the Japanese have a special coordinator set up, and she refused to inform the parents of the student and the house he was going to be living in. Posted this before. I was a kid, probably 9 or 10, and my mom had a friend and her son over for lunch. The kid disappeared for about 10 minutes, and at the time I thought he had gone to the bathroom cause I really had to go. So when he came back I quickly maneuvered my way past him into the room before the bathroom, where we had a fish tank. This would be completely irrelevant if the fish tank wasn't cloudy and swirling about. At first glance I didn't know what it was until I noticed smashed and ripped apart pieces of little fish faces moving around in the swirl. The kid reached into the fish tank and squeezed the ever-loving life out of every single fish in that tank. Edit. Typus. Update 1. Ended up speaking with my mother anyway, and when I reminded her of it, she said she would have to call me back after she thought about it. After talking it over with my father, they determined the date at which they had the fish tank in that room as 1985 because it was remodeled shortly after. It was 3 large fancy goldfish in an 8-gallon aquarium. They were laughing at all the details that came back to them. The date also means I was 8 years old, so I was close. The time frame helped her remember exactly when it happened. My mom remembers it as several women over for a birthing class. At the time my mom was a midwife and did everything baby, from breathing to delivery. One of the women had a 10 to 11-year-old boy who she kept losing track of, would keep wandering off as she put it, and ended up eventually being the culprit. He was not scolded, but rather talked to in a conversation up close and quietly. My mom said she didn't really remember much about her, the kid's mom, reaction cause I was crying, so she, my mom, was dealing with me rather than them. She, luckily, kept track of all the babies/families she helped deliver up till a certain point when she stopped midwifing in the late 80s. She also agreed to try and get the answer of what happened to the kid, if possible, after I explained RUDEST wanted to know, which I also had to explain what RUDEST actually was. My husband let a former coworker crash on the couch because he had been drinking and we didn't want him to drive. Woke up the next morning and he had stolen our computer, a cell phone, a little bit of cash, and our cigarettes. Turns out he had a drug problem. We got our computer back. Had a drunk friend puke on my son's bedroom floor. He thought it was the bathroom. My son wasn't home, thank goodness. Had a different drunk friend pee all over my bathroom floor, which I discovered by walking into the bathroom the next morning while wearing socks. I need to stop letting drunk people stay over. Years ago my then roommate had a party that lasted for days. I would go to bed and they were there, drinking and hanging out. When I got up for work they would be passed out around the apartment. The final straw was when one of those fuckers projectile vomited on my rubber ducky shower curtain and made no effort to clean it up. I moved out that day during their party, and since all of the furniture in the common area was mine, I had the pleasure of turning off their movie, removing it from my DVD player, unhooking my TV, and removing my futon. I took all the toilet paper because I was the only one who ever bought it. I left the shower curtain though. In case people are wondering, I did try asking my roommate to limiting the parties to weekends and asking people to clean up after themselves. His response was, if you don't like it then move. My shitty cousins were allowed to run wild. I hated it when they came over. The younger one was around 11 and was just oblivious to all social expectations. He helped himself to the fridge and ate all the ice cream we had, then complained that it wasn't any good and just roamed around the house rummaging through our stuff. His older brother, who is a year older than me and was 16 at the time, waltzed into my room and started messing with my guitars, which I was protective of because they're fucking expensive and would change the tuning, whack it around, etc. Then he picked up my air rifle, which was powerful enough to kill at least a squirrel or rabbit, went outside, and started pointing it at my neighbor's cows. I'm very non-confrontational and usually just put up with annoyances, but I tore into him for that. I was taught from the time I was a toddler that you don't ever treat guns like toys, and you never point them at anything you don't intend to shoot, whether it's loaded or not. Especially fucking living creatures. Thankfully they weren't closely related, and I only saw them like 5 times in my life, but them being basically strangers to me made their behavior even more mind-boggling. I'm pissed just typing this, even though it has been years. Some of my wife's family came to visit. The idea was that on their way to the Smoky Mountains they would stop and visit with us for a day or two, since we seldom see each other, and our house is on the way. Turns out that was total BS. They just wanted to use our house as a free hotel. Which, to a degree, is fine. I don't mind lending a room to a family member. But they were not even remotely cool about it. First, they called and asked if we could have something for them to eat, because it would be late when they arrived, and had no time to stop. So I decided I would make a lasagna, since I'm kind of known for that in the family. So I spent like $60 and several hours to make 2 big pans of lasagna, since it would have to feed several people. They showed up with chick-fil-A bags and said they had already eaten. Then they went immediately to their rooms upstairs, not to sleep, but to watch TV. TV's in the bedroom, without hardly saying a thing to us besides hi how's it going. Then in the middle of the night one of them got cold and turned the thermostat up to like 77 degrees, which means the heater and non-stop for hours and hours, and we woke up damn near in a sweat. When they woke up they asked if I normally cook breakfast. I said no, not on weekdays, because I have to go to work. They gave dejected looks, so I was like, fine, I can make breakfast. Would you guys like waffles or eggs and bacon? They said eggs, so I made a shit ton of eggs and bacon and left it for them because I had to go to work. When I got home they hadn't even touched the food I made. The kitchen was an absolute disaster because they decided they wanted waffles instead and helped themselves without even asking, dirtying every damn dish in the house and ruining my waffle iron because they left it on until it auto shut off, but by then had burned the batter until it was fused to the thing and the whole house reeked of burnt waffles for 2 days. They also clearly scratched my wife's car as they left because it was in the driveway and coincidentally had huge scratch where maroon paint had rubbed off, and guess what color their van was? I asked them about it and they said they had no idea how it got there. My son, from the age of 5 to 12 years old, had built every Star Wars Lego set together, minus the Falcon, which was to be our next set to build. We even had our own Lego lingo. He'd say, "Mom, I need a 12x4 or a Rona," so on. This was our thing to do, as he has a twin sister, so it was important that I spend quality time with each of them, doing things they each loved to do. I had invited a friend over who brought her son. We will call him Master Destroyer, MD. MD is known to be a troublemaker. His father passed away, and mommy lets him get away with whatever he wants or does. He was upstairs playing Legos with our son while I visited with the mom. My mistake. When next thing I know, son comes down visibly upset, only for us to find out MD had picked up every single Lego Star Wars set we had ever built together and smashed them on the ground. Friend made MD apologize, and they left right after. Our son never touched a Lego again after that. It wasn't just the destruction of the Legos, but this kid, MD, ruined our thing that brought my son and I together. I still talk to the friend, but have kindly told her that her son isn't welcomed over, even though it's been almost 5 years since this occurred. His behavior hasn't changed, nor has the discipline the mom lacks. I refuse to let him take anything else away from my son that he holds dear to him. I have set the Legos aside, along with all of the instructions, in hope that one day, when he is a father, he will crack open the tubs of Legos and have a connection with his kid or kids as we once had. This happened about a month ago. We live in North Carolina and got hot with a hurricane. My sister-in-law's place got messed up and we let her stay with us for a little while. After about 2 weeks she started taking Adderall amongst a slew of other meds and was getting really fucked up on it. She started locking herself in the bathroom and sleeping on the toilet, leaving the door open and falling asleep while smoking outside and passing out on the floor in random places and leaving pills scattered all over the floor. Not to mention we have 2 small kids who are running around. When we asked her to stop taking the pills she freaked and told us she was going to claim residency at our place and that my wife was only with me because I had money. I told her I was done and it wasn't safe for our kids. She had to go. She ended up saying my wife was dead to her unless she takes the kids and leaves me. Needless to say, she chose to stay and now we don't have to deal with her sister's problems anymore because we are dead to her. Back when we were newlyweds, my husband invited his guy friends for the weekend to do some activity. It's fine. I love most of his friends. I was going to put them on air mattresses in the basement. They arrived and the one friend I only tolerate shows up with a woman. Unannounced. We were all like 22 to 23 at the time, but his date was in her 50s. Not that the age issue was a thing, it was just interesting. Anyway, the woman was nice, but he completely ignored her the entire weekend. She spent the whole weekend hanging out with me. They didn't even get her a ticket to the event they went to, so I had to talk to people I don't know when I just wanted to relax around the house that weekend. There was also the issue that I couldn't put her and him in the basement on the air mattresses. I had to move my kid out of her bedroom and have her sleep with me. Yay. The friend ended up getting really drunk and breaking something on the storm door. We had to go buy some replacement part. But the most fun was what happened a week later. After my mom came to visit, I found a box of ribbed for her pleasure condoms in the bathroom cabinet. We didn't use condoms, so they definitely weren't ours. The only thing I can figure out is that they dropped their box in the throes of passion and my mom found them in or around the bed when she slept there. Not that condoms are an embarrassing thing for a married couple to own, but now she thinks we have kinky sex in our daughter's room. Yay. My friend entered my home, and my very typically shy cat came up to see what was what and greet him. He said, "I hate cats," and kicked her. Haven't talked to him since. And edit to say he knew I had a cat. We were in our 20s. He wasn't a petulant child. Edit 2. Well shit, I love how protective everyone is of my cat and their pets in general. So sweet and terrifying. Lots of throat punching happening down below. For those asking about the kind of kick this person did not like, punt her across the room. But it was a kick with some liftoff. Not a light nudge. I do that daily because she's my shadow and I don't want to hurt her when I can't have her zipping around under my feet. She's fine now. She was fine then too. It wasn't hard enough to hurt her permanently. Perhaps emotionally, the poor sweet kitty. It shocked both her and me. I'm my cat's protector and advocate, but I hate to say that back then I had a lot of confidence issues, and I was taken way aback by his swift action. Caught me off guard. I think I yelled, "What the fuck? Don't kick my cat." But I can't remember anything I did that was remarkable afterwards, other than the decision to stop inviting him over. No throat punching or otherwise. I've told this story IRL before, and I don't want to post my cat because she's very identifiable and this comment got way more traction than I anticipated. Sorry you're all fired up, I was too. Just not brave enough to show it. I should have kicked him out. Edit 3 to say that there are shades of grey between a nudge and a field goal kick. If it was just a nudge, I would have just put my cat away without yelling, because everyone knows that some cats love to investigate people who are disinterested in them. Had a couple over for dinner. Friends of ours. My wife was pregnant at the time. Cat pooped in litter box in the basement. Buddy's wife told me to change the litter, saying it was due to my wife being pregnant. I said I would after the board game we were playing was over, as nobody could smell it. She said, but your wife is pregnant. I said, so. She proceeds to empty her water cup across the table in my direction. It literally went over my shoulder and completely missed me. I'm stunned briefly at how unbelievably rude she is. Then begin to laugh my ass off that she missed me with a full cup of water point blank. I end the game. Tell them to go home. She says we should do it again sometime. No, you rude bitch. I put up with you because your husband is my good friend. Wife and I close the door behind them after they leave, look into each other's eyes in silence for a few moments, then laugh our asses off again at what the hell just happened. Had 3 other housemates at the time. We all rented a small apartment on the beach from a friend. We played Risk, the board game, regularly, and we were in easily a 10+ hour game that was going on for a few weeks. Super intense. The board is safely in the corner on the dining room table. No activity on the table is allowed when a board is on there. Well, one of our housemates came back with her friend after the bars, and let's just say her friend is a dumb annoying drunk who doesn't know her limit at fucking 30 until she passes out. It was a weeknight. All of us had work the next morning. Being a small place, then boisterous girls woke us up. Not a big deal. But then, we hear what's this shit? And we just hear a hand swiping a game board with game pieces falling everywhere. This fucking bitch just ruined our game in one fell swoop. The 3 of us that were home rush out of our respective rooms and see the nuclear holocaust that was our world. We flipped the fuck out. Even our mate who brought her was not happy. She basically tried to play dumb, then says, what's the big deal? We all gave her a blanket, told her we are all going to bed and get the fuck out by tomorrow morning. Unacceptable. Then she puked in our toilet, didn't clean up after herself, broke our shower curtain rod. How? And if I recall correctly, she left food out that went bad by next morning. About a year or 2 later, she sexually assaulted another one of my friends. She's a cunt. Edit. Wow, this kind of blew up. So thanks for the upvotes everyone. Who knew I just needed to tell this story? The funny thing is there is so much more to this story in this apartment and the roommates, but it's O/T. My one roommate, great friend of mine, is the most happy, outgoing, positive person there is. There have been 2 instances that he ever got extremely mad. One was when he was overseas. He was the most angry out of all of us in this situation, and it kind of broke the tension seeing him so mad. Kind of like a cute puppy trying to be all bark. He was leading in the game. We bring it up all the time to him. I might share this with him honestly. The reason why our Risk games take long is we do change some rules. 1. We play capitals. Each player has to put a dime on one of their beginning territories. You get 1 additional reinforcement per turn for every capital you own. 2. We also limit the cards and reinforcement to be static. 3. The fact that we have all been playing for close to 15 years means it's all about the roles, strategy, and alliances, which can or cannot be disclosed to other players. No phones though. So yeah, 10 hours average for us. This one was just a perfect storm, and it was a really good even game. That is until this bitch came along. My group of friends have since cut her off. She's toxic, and after the thing with my other friend happened, that was basically it. He didn't want to press charges and luckily protection was used. He had no idea according to him until the next day. I have seen her in places and immediately left. She lucky it wasn't me. I would have pressed charges. She's not in prison, but a good rehab stint would do her well. She's extremely entitled. There was never a reason to take pictures of the board because we all trusted one another. Since this, we have taken pictures at the end of each session. When I was much younger, my mom's aunt came and visited and brought her dog. We didn't see her too much, but she was close with my mom back when mom was a kid. During the visit, the dog dropped a loaf on the living room carpet. Not a big deal you would think, but my mom had the audacity to ask her to clean up after her own dog. Apparently, this was a degree of rudeness my aunt had never experienced before from a host. The offense was so deep that she never spoke to my mother for the rest of her life. She moved across the country and the only time we ever heard from her again was when I got a letter from her saying that I should get some genetic tests for something that might be in the family. Final plot twist, since she never married and I was the only male descendant in her family line, so she left me everything in her will.